Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. It was a big news day for the Age of Empires franchise, with a flurry of announcements outlining the 2026 plans for Age of Mythology, Age of Empires 2, and Age of Empires 4. In this video, we'll do a quick summary of all the major news, so you know what to look out for over the next year. We'll start with Age of Mythology, who had probably the biggest surprise. A couple of years back, they'd originally committed to two major DLCs after AoM Retold came out, which ended up being the Chinese and Japanese Pantheons. After the recent Japanese DLC, World's Edge said they would continue to support the game, but it was up in the air if they would ever do another full-on Pantheon, or just switch to single god packs and pull back resources. The numbers we have for the game honestly aren't looking great, with each new DLC giving a short-term bump, but in between those, it seems to settle around AoE3 player-base levels. That's a bit ominous, considering AoE3 support is in limbo at the moment, from presumably too small of a player base to be profitable, though it is also free to play, so it's hard to directly compare that at a glance. Great news for Age of Mythology fans though, they've announced there's at least one more Pantheon coming in 2026, which is going to feature the Aztecs. They were probably the #1 request by the community, so it really does seem like they're listening to that feedback, and it's a civ that obviously lends itself to an interesting Pantheon. There's actually a little more to it than that as well, with the official post pushing a new expansion pass, which is going to include 4 different things. First, you get a new god pack for the Greeks, featuring Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. New major gods for existing pantheons make all the sense in the world to me, borrowing the idea of a variant civ from AoE4. It's a relatively easy way to reuse assets and still give players something new to experiment with and keep things fresh. There's also some more cosmetic-oriented things the expansion pass gets you, with new unique icons, building skins, and a dynamic blood system, whatever that means, but sounds very on-brand for Aztecs. I'd be curious if this goes well, whether cosmetic-themed DLC packs become more standard in other games in the franchise. AoE2 might be a bit trickier to bring these things into, as there are so many visual mods already, with AoE2's Blood mod perhaps already being an inspiration here. But if they're optional and well done, it does seem like a pretty natural idea. Of course, the expansion pass also includes the Aztec DLC, which I'd expect out in the later end of 2026, given Japanese just came out a couple of months ago, and I'm sure it takes a lot of time to create a new Pantheon and the 12-mission campaign they're promising. My takeaway is they're really trying to keep the game going, and hope the player base expands over 2026. I actually had someone over last week to install a reverse osmosis system in my house, and we got to talking, where the Age of Empires franchise of course came up, as I'm sure it does for everyone. He was kind of lukewarm on that, but was very interested in reminiscing about Age of Mythology in particular, and was surprised that game was still getting new expansions. It really brought home for me that there are a lot of people out there who just love Age of Mythology, but don't even know it's still getting new content, as it just fell off the map for over a decade. It just feels like there's a huge potential fanbase out there, and I feel like every time you can get the game back into the news with a new DLC, a few more hear about it, and you bring some of them back. It's a matter of breaking through to people who don't know it exists, but I'm glad they're taking at least one more shot at a major Pantheon this year. The expansion pass, by the way, is something you can get starting on December 18th. Moving on, there was another announcement that Age of Empires Mobile is coming to PC early in the new year. Admittedly, I haven't actually played it myself, and I'm not sure if this is really aimed at the AoE2 or AoE4 crowd at all, as it really feels like a completely unrelated game. But if this kind of thing helps Microsoft feel good about the franchise and the Age of Empires name, then it's probably a neutral to slight positive thing for AoE2 players. The announcement mentions 70 million players in the Age of Empires franchise to date, and given the best guesses of sales for AoE2, AoE4, etc., I wouldn't be surprised if over 3/4 of that number comes from counting people who have downloaded AoE Mobile. I will say some of the top comments on the AoE Mobile trailer are pretty brutal, and maybe understandably, the AoE3 fans in particular are a bit salty. Next though, we need to talk about AoE2, which has its own big news. In February, just 2 months from now, we're getting a South American themed DLC called The Last Chieftains. This has 3 new civilizations, the Mapuche, who are from the Argentina and Chile region, the Muisca from the highlands of Colombia, and the Tupi from southeast Brazil. This feels like a classic AoE2 DLC, with civilizations playable on the rank ladder, and each civ getting a campaign of probably 5 or 6 missions. They mentioned the Muisca campaign giving you a choice of playing from 2 different perspectives, which actually sounds like Forgotten Empires is stepping up their campaigns following Chronicles' lead, with more decision-making and player agency. We have a few glimpses at new units, though obviously more information will be coming out in January, and usually if you're observant in screenshots, you can get a bit of a feel for the civilizations. For the Mapuche, we see a horse or donkey rider, and some similarly themed architecture to Incas. Muisca have a javelineer with a shield calling back to the Inca's slinger, but crossed with a skirmisher, while the Tupi seem to be the archer civilization of the three. It'll be interesting to see how they navigate balancing pre-Spanish and post-Spanish contact, with Mapuche in particular having a cavalry unit being a bit different direction than the existing American civs. All three cultures peaked prior to Spanish arrival, so they have plenty of earlier history to work with, but Mapuche in particular resisted the Spanish for a long time, even after the AoE2 timeframe, and the fact they have cavalry does seem to point in that direction, though I'll admit I'm far from an expert on these civilizations. Gameplay-wise, I'm also very curious if these are new Eagle Warrior civs. My understanding is Eagle Warriors are exclusively an Aztec thing historically, but would be happy to see more unique flavors of that unit, maybe bringing back a bonus for greater speed. Definitely the American civs getting Cannon Galleon looks like a temporary measure that's going to be replaced by a new regional naval unit. I will say I think 3 civilizations is the right number though, and even 2 would be fine per DLC going forward if they're done well. Personally, I think 5 new civs in the Three Kingdoms DLC was too many for me, and I felt some viewer and player fatigue with all the new mechanics, which was all just too much at once. I suspect this will be better received than Three Kingdoms, as it's getting back to exploring some of those lesser known civilizations that deserve a spotlight, and we also know there's a huge following for AoE2 in Argentina. There are actually about double the number of ranked players from Argentina as China in AoE2, and Chile and Brazil are well represented on the latter as well, so this is maybe an overdue nod to that region. Certainly, getting away from Europe is always welcome, and is something to look forward to in February. Notably, there was no mention of Chronicles, which doesn't seem like a great sign, but hopefully they're just saving that announcement for a bit later. And finally, for Age of Empires 4, they're getting 2 expansions announced in the new year. The first is a Chinese campaign DLC coming in spring. I did see some disappointment out there about not having a campaign in the most recent DLC, and it seems they're going in the AoE2 Chronicles route of trying standalone DLC releases. One thing the franchise does well is when one game has a good idea, the others are quick to adopt it. The second DLC will introduce Vikings and one other unannounced civilization, with presumably Spanish or Aztecs in the running. It would be kind of funny to have Aztecs in AoE4, Age of Mythology, and a South American themed DLC for AoE2 all in the same year, as a follow-up to the East Asian theme that the games all accidentally or intentionally landed on in 2025. In the Dynasties of the East DLC for AoE4 recently, I wondered if the new Byzantine variant was supposed to be a stand-in for the Vikings, and I think it's a good idea to introduce a full-on Viking civ that really digs into their architecture and language. I am a little surprised they're not calling them Norse and going with Vikings instead, as it's pretty trendy these days to get very nitpicky about using the term Viking to refer to a profession and not a culture. Either way, the accusations that AoE4 has become Age of Variants seems to have been exaggerated. So that's the major news that came out today. 2025 was a very active year for DLCs, and it looks like 2026 is going to be a good follow-up. Let me know what you guys are most looking forward to. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.